Welcome into another Dove Valley Deep Diver special. I am your host for these, Erick Trickel. You can also catch me live on Friday nights with the one and only Kenneth Booker. Joining me for the DVD specials for these quick 10, 15, slightly more recordings is the one and only Lance Sanderson. Lance, my man, how you doing?
Doing good, man. It was fun to see this Broncos team get a win against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers the other day. 1-2 to start the season. We saw a lot of offensive progression from weeks 1 to 2 to 2 to 3. And this week, guys, we're talking about this Broncos offense. I can't wait to break it down with you, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I would disagree a little bit that we saw progression with this offense from week 1 to week 2. I think this offense looked far worse in week 2 outside of some garbage time plays. And part of that was because when we watched this offense and watched that game through, the Steelers defense, man, they were perfectly fine getting a touchdown and just sitting back and like letting them basically their defense win it. They wanted one touchdown on offense and their defense would handle the Broncos offense. And they seemed content with that. And they came out and they were talking about how they knew what the offense was going to do, how predictable it was. But off that, it was great to see the offense come out against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and be the complete opposite. They weren't predictable. They came out passing the ball, even though they're talking about emphasizing the run and everything was talking about how emphasizing the run. They came out passing the ball and had a offensive, what's the right word here? Breakthrough, I guess. Because a lot of things were clicking, especially the passing game, which was so important because they struggled for those first 2 weeks. The Seahawks, they threw a tight zone coverage at them that Mike McDonald likes to run. That made things very difficult for the receivers to get separation, made things difficult for Bo Nix to make proper reads because of just how tight that zone coverage was. And the Steelers with their coverage, I mean, their secondary is the weak point, but they played a great game. They left very few openings, and it didn't help that the Bo Nix was missing open receivers. But they came through against the Buccaneers, against a pretty solid secondary, though they were missing some key starters on defense. And had a passing game. They had a simplified passing offense that Bo Nix was able to make quick reads and get the ball out quickly, which also helped the offensive line with Mike McGlinchey out as well, like starting a inexperienced, basically rookie right tackle, even though it's the second year, he was redshirted his first year, his last year. And Alex Palczewski. So there was a lot that went right, and it was great to see Sean Payton, because one thing about Sean Payton that everybody can agree on, he is very egotistical as a coach. It is very much, this is my offense, we're going to run.
Oh, yeah.
It was great to see him make things a little bit more simpler for Bo Nix and get the execution amped up. Because from here, once you get the execution going, then you can start build with the confidence that these young players are getting. Then you can start getting a little bit more complicated.
And you're absolutely right on a couple of different things here. One, Sean Payton did a really good job of finally accentuating some of the playmakers and getting Bo Nix some easy things just to get himself into a rhythm. Obviously, the very first play of the game, you throw the back shoulder throw to Courtland Sutton, get him involved right away. You take another shot down the field to Josh Reynolds. That was a great throw by Bo Nix. You get him out on the bootleg, run the ball a couple times in between there. You score a touchdown right off the bat. That just gets the offense in rhythm. And then you let the defense go out there and do their thing. Then you get the timely turnover. Brandon Jones takes it back. You get the ball back inside. You score another touchdown on the Jaleel McLaughlin run to the outside it was the fake dive with the pitch on the back end. It was a great scheme right away from Sean Payton, where you saw he was kind of in his bag a little bit, bringing some of the stuff that you like to see from not only the New Orleans days back in the early 2000s with Drew Brees, but you saw some stuff that Bo Nix did really well at Oregon, the timing stuff, getting the ball over the middle of the field a little bit more. That was a really big breath of fresh air to me. And the offensive line, and I want to throw the caveat out there that you're not facing Vita Vea, you're not facing Kalijah Kancey, who are their two big-time interior defensive linemen, but the offensive line along the interior did not allow a single pressure the entire game. Bo Nix had time, he had patience, he had great vision, he was playing with anticipation, he threw a really good, pretty ball, made some plays with his legs, that scramble that he made coming out of pressure from the backside, ducks underneath, runs up for 15, 16 yards, something like that for a first down. It was just so much fun to watch this Broncos offense. And I think that you're finally starting to see a little bit of maturation, not only of Bo Nix as a third-time starter at the NFL level, but a maturation of Sean Payton, understanding that it can't be so complicated all the time. We have to pare it down a little bit and just make it easy for everybody and do the things that everybody does well.
Yeah, and one thing that you mentioned, you talked about Vita Vea and Kalijah Kancey being out and how big that is. Those are the guys that make the Buccaneers defensive line tick, especially
Yep.
as pass rushers. Everybody looks at Vita Vea's size and think he's just a run stuffer. He is a
Oh
quality
man.
pass rusher.
Oh yeah.
And Kalijah Kancey is so quick and creates such a problem with where you can move him around and what you can get out of him that they make that pass rush ticking. So them being out was also a bonus for this offensive line. And also going back to where what it was nice to see about Sean Payton changing up is one of the things that the Steelers said is that they knew that they weren't going to attack deep. And they really didn't. There was only a few passes beyond
Right.
like 1 or 2 passes beyond 20 yards. They've struggled with that. They struggled with that against them. It was nice to see that this time they threw 8 attempts beyond 10 yards, 2 or 3 beyond 20. They went 2 for 3 on 20 plus. They went 4 for 8, 50% on over 10, which isn't ideal. 4 for 8 isn't ideal on 10 plus throws, but they were clean, they were consistent, and they made things happen.
Yep.
And they helped ease up that coverage a little bit, which in a way kind of helped out the running game, but the running game still had its issues, which is going to take us over to this. I'm going to pass it over to you real quick, and then because there's more I want to get to, just real quick, about like 30 seconds or so. Javonte Williams. What do they do with Javonte Williams?
They either get him a pair of contacts or glue his eyelids open because that guy he's not seeing it right now. He's not seeing the holes. He's not seeing the blocking scheme. He's not seeing defenders. He's not even seeing his offensive linemen. It's literally like he's running with his eyes closed. And that's a problem right now because with his ability to break tackles, if he could just see what he's running into, he has the contact balance and the power to make it actually work for him. And right now he's just not doing it. And that's a big time problem for this Broncos offense.
Yeah. So going into a lot of the stats and stuff, the advanced numbers for it, Tyler Beatty actually has a higher stacked box rate that he's rushing against than Javonte Williams does. Now, Javonte Williams, he has played almost twice as much, and he has almost twice as many carries against a stacked box specifically. But he has I think it was like 13 carries for 27 yards against a stacked box.
Yep.
Tyler Beatty has 7 for 68 against a stacked box, which is phenomenal. And granted, that one big run helped him out. But what Tyler Beatty does is he has quickness and vision that Javonte Williams doesn't have, that you have to have when you are facing stacked boxes. On top of that, it would be easier to write off Javonte Williams' struggles as facing stacked boxes if that was all he was struggling against. Mm-hmm. He has like a 2.4 yards per carry against neutral boxes and a 2 yard per carry against light boxes. Now, stacked boxes are 8 or more defenders in the box. Neutral is flat 7 and light is under 7, 6 or fewer in the box. He's averaging 2 yards per carry against light boxes. That is so astronomically bad. And you can't shrug off his stacked boxes and his issues being against stacked boxes as a result of that. He is averaging 2.2 yards per carry overall, and that just isn't good enough. 13 for 27 against stacked boxes, which, hey, 11 of his carries haven't been against a stacked box here. 11 of 24, not against a stacked box. And he's averaging 2.2 yards per carry. And stacked boxes is actually where he's averaging his second highest rate at 2.1. Yep. Light boxes, 2.0. Neutral boxes, 2.4. He's struggling no matter how many defenders are in the box.
I think a big thing here, and I'm going to get after Sean Payton a little bit. And Eric, we talked about this privately, but I want to bring this up. I think that the Broncos need to be a little bit more creative in the usage of how they're utilizing this running game. When it's Javonte Williams, they don't really try to run him outside. That's not his best skill set. They're running duo up front all the time. And he's just running directly into the back of his offensive lineman because he's not seeing it. They're not switching up the front up front with the blocking schemes well enough. And I think they need to get a little bit more creative. And I'm talking specifically when we go back to the Cleveland Browns game from last season where they ran pin and pull. They were pinning down with Garrett Bowles, pulling a guard to the outside, kicking Myles Garrett out. They gashed that Jim Schwartz defense, which is typically known for being a very good run defense. This offense right now is stagnant up front, and I'm not sure if it's just a Javonte Williams problem, if it's an offensive line problem, if it's a play calling problem, but they've got to do something to jumpstart this offense. And quite honestly, I think that another way that you could do that is utilizing Bo Nix. You saw it against Tampa Bay where they utilized some of those zone read option plays where they got Bo Nix on the outside. They attacked the edge defender, made him make a commitment, and then Bo kept the ball, ran upfield for a big gain in the first quarter. He also had that it was a 4th and 1 attempt where he actually saw what was going on in front of him, picked and chose his spot, dove forward for a first down. You got the big scramble that he had. You got to utilize Bo Nix and that athleticism a little bit more because that's going to open up even more options in the running game, which is now going to collapse your safeties down. It's going to collapse your linebackers down and open up the play action passing attack, which is Broncos offense just doesn't have right now.
Yeah, I don't fully disagree with everything you're saying, and utilizing Bo Nix in the option offense a little bit more because I mean, he is one of 2 quarterbacks to have a run where he hit over 20 miles per hour, and one of 3 to have over 15. Right there with Jane Daniels, Lamar Jackson, and Jalen Hurts, I believe, are the other 3 quarterbacks. You need to use that athleticism. Now, going back to your point about Javonte Williams and only running him inside, I have to push back here because he doesn't have the highest rate of inside running on this team. That is Tyler Beatty. So you can't excuse Javonte Williams only running inside because he's doing it at the second highest rate of it. And his rate is really lifted up by his game against the Steelers, where 81.8% of his rushes came running between the tackles. Every other game, he's at 50% against the Seahawks, where he had 8 attempts for 23 yards, 2.9 yards per carry. And then against the Buccaneers, where he ran 5 for 12 with 60% between the tackles.
Yep.
So, like, he's just struggling. And then you also have the fact of when you do rush him outside, he's cutting it back inside, even though there's a lane opening. There was a run against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers where you had a safety come down and set the edge against it. And what does Javonte Williams do? It was an outside run. He was running outside in the C gap off Garrett Bowles. He sees the safety there. Javonte Williams is a power back. He should be lowering his shoulder and trying to plow through that defensive back, that safety.
Right.
Who isn't the most reliable tackler, mind you. Instead, he cuts it back inside where his 2 blockers, Powers and Bulls, are engaged and blocking 3 other defenders.
Yep.
That safety still made the play. He came from behind and tackled Javonte Williams from behind, which is easier to do instead of lowering your shoulder and plowing through it. So I don't think you can write off and I don't think you are. I don't think you can write off his issues running the ball as only running inside because Tyler Beatty is having tremendous success running inside. He ran 88.9% of his runs came between the tackles against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where he had 9 rushes for 70 yards. 88.9% of those 9 rushes between the tackles. And then his only run against the Steelers came between the tackles, and he took that for 16 yards.
Yep.
So it's not that excuse, but they can still have options. And for me, what they need to do with Javonte Williams is they need to cut back his carries because you can't trust him as a runner. He needs to gain that trust back, but you still got to use him as a pass blocker and receiver on 3rd downs because he has done well as a receiver and he's been really good as a blocker. And Tyler Beatty, Jaleel McLaughlin, even Audric Esme when he was healthy, Blake Watson, they don't bring that same element to the offense as Javonte Williams does.
I got one quick question for you, and we got about 30 seconds here. Do you have an issue with the prevalence of the Broncos when they go under center handing the football off, where they're not utilizing any kind of play action or a straight drop passing game? Or is that something that you don't necessarily think is a big issue with the run game in terms of telegraphing what's coming?
So basically what you're asking me is, do I think that them being under center and handing it off is creating an issue with basically being predictable?
Yes, because it's for the first 2 weeks, it was like 8 out of 10 times that they were under center in the Pittsburgh game. They ran the football under center. In the Seahawks game, I think it was 7 out of 11. And then in the first half specifically of the Tampa Bay game, they were, I think it was like 4 out of 8 where they ran under center. So they're very clearly showing that when we're under center, we intend on running the football.
Yeah, and I mean, you have your pros and cons for it too, because if you sit there and you're running 80% of the time under center, then you can sit there and get them with the under center play action boot.
Yeah, but they're not doing that.
Expecting run. They have done it. And when they have done it, they have had some success passing the ball.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's fine to set it up. And also, when you're under center, that you give your time, extra time for your running backs to make the reads they need to read the defense. And Tyler Beatty, he's doing a good job with that, even though, I mean, with 70% of his runs coming from when they're under center, he's got, again, 10 rushes for 86 yards overall. He's having success with it. And Jaleel McLaughlin, most of his runs have been out of shotgun. Javonte Williams, he's struggling with it. And even Audric Estime, even though he's been hurt, he's only had 2 carries. He picked up 14 yards. Both of his runs came with Bo Nix under center.
Yep.
So there's pros and cons both ways. To me, I think it all balances out in the end. I would like to see a little bit more variety, but I don't think that you do that with Javonte Williams.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a
just
fair
because
point.
Javonte Williams with his issues reading, I don't think you can, hinder that even more by putting him in shotgun where he's getting the ball almost immediately and can't make that read, instead has to go.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's going to do it for us. There was a lot more about this offense we wanted to talk about, but we obviously didn't get to spend a lot of time talking about Javonte Williams. Wanted to talk about the receivers, the job they're doing, which they're doing fine. They're not doing great. Just to get that in there. But that's going to do it for us. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you guys have any comments or questions or even topic ideas, make sure you leave them down below. Also, make sure you leave a like, make sure you subscribe, because both those help out the algorithm here on YouTube so much and get us to more eyes, more viewers, and honestly, more interaction. So we thank you guys for tuning in. You guys can follow us on Twitter at Erick Trickel for myself, at Lance S_MHH for my partner here joining me for these. You guys can also follow the Twitter account for the Dub Valley Deep Divers podcast, which is live every Friday night at 6 p.m. Mountain Time at DVDD_pod. You can also follow the mothership account of Mile High Huddle at Mile High Huddle. On Twitter, you can follow us on Facebook as well at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle, where you can get access to all of our written content as well as all of our videos and all of our podcasts that we do. We have a nightly podcast, not necessarily Dub Valley Deep Divers, but building the Broncos, Mile High Insiders, all these shows. We have a show every single week, all at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Thank you guys for tuning in. Again, leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment below. Thank you guys for watching. Have a wonderful night, evening, morning, whatever it happens to be at the time you're watching this. And as always, go Broncos.